This is Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
What's up, folks? Welcome in. It is Money Moves here on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Jonathan Von Tobel flying solo once again, but don't worry, we'll have plenty of people along as we will pick the brains of some smart folks getting ready for a lot of stuff on the card. Yes, it's March 24th, and yes, we're post-NCAA tournament first weekend, and you would think that maybe there's not that much going on, but very busy day, and we are chock full of topics, bets, and more to get to. So let's start every show, as we usually do.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
First up on the rundown, draft day. Call me Kevin Costner. Not only the NBA draft, but the NFL draft as well. Markets are starting to populate for the National Football League, and rumors abound for the National Basketball Association as we have one player that is moving up draft boards or is maybe at the top for one team. We'll talk about this 125-1 long shot to potentially go with the first overall pick. Very dependent on one outcome. We'll tell you who that is. You could probably guess who it is at this point if you've been paying attention, but if you haven't, you want to stick around because it's an interesting topic of conversation. And speaking of basketball, it's all we got today too. Hoops, more hoops. Not Greg Hoops Peterson. He'll be with us later in the week. But today we got a lot of basketball to get to. An NBA slate that has some big favorites once again. We also have to recap what happened a little bit yesterday as well, which, of course, is where we start our day here today on the rundown. Last night, a chalky day in the NBA. Big favorites on the card yesterday in the association, and they ultimately deliver an ugly night for the NBA. Favorites go 7-3 against the spread. 5 double-digit favorites go 4-1 ATS. The lone loss, the Orlando Magic, who go down in an ugly fashion to the Indiana Pacers. But we talked about this yesterday, and Orlando's got all of the problems and talked about their issues offensively, and we have seen it time and time again. But who did we talk about yesterday? That if you're going to put together this money line parlay that was kind of stupid, who might blow it up? Well, if you were going to include the Houston Rockets, it might be one that ultimately gets you. And sure enough, that's what happens last night. Lose outright to Chicago as 8.5-point favorites. The Rockets do. Now, I do think that game is a microcosm of some bigger issues for the Houston Rockets. But let's start with one of the issues that is starting to pick up a little bit steam here. Ime Udoka. And isn't it ironic that on a night in which I'm not a wrestling guy, it's not SummerSlam because it was summer. David, we saw 2 Boston Celtics show up today. Derek White was among them yesterday, I should say, at a WWE event of some sort. I don't know what the name of it was. But was it Monday Night Raw? Okay, thank you. Don't quote me on that. I'm sorry. I've never watched a wrestling match in my life, although I do respect the art. But you have Derek White and you have Joe Mazzulla at Monday Night Raw in Boston, showing up there, crowd cheering for him. Everybody's happy. The irony is that, of course, miles away, their former head coach, who was fired in shame, Ime Udoka, is sitting here and doing this after the game because his team lost to the Chicago Bulls.
Poor start, disrespected the game, not prepared from the get-go. Just non-aggressive, following around, watching them shoot. They have nothing to lose. They're going to fire away, and obviously to give up 41 points in that first quarter is disappointing. It was one quarter that killed us, and weren't prepared to play at all.
Rockets give up 120.4 points per 100 possessions in non-garbage time against Chicago. Ultimately, the loss there, 132-124. The big issues for Houston in that game outside of defensive, or the lack of defensive play, we'll say, even though they're normally known for that sort of thing, their offense yet again fails to show up here in this contest, and that has been a problem for Houston all year long. They're trying to figure some things out. They've inserted Reed Shepherd into the starting lineup. That hasn't really worked out entirely for them up to this point. Now, in terms of what we see overall, Reed Shepherd is a positive. When he's on the floor with Kevin Durant, they outscore opponents by 6.3 points every 100 possessions. However, their most used lineup with him out there, it actually gets outscored by 6.4 points every 100 possessions. Ime Udoka's got a lot of issues that he's got to fix with his team. And almost every single time after a bad loss or a result, it just ends up in that, him just being Ime Udoka and going out there and trashing them in a post-game press conference. Have to think that wears thin at some point. And I was a Udoka fan. I mean, at one point in Boston, there was a great story when they were making their run to the finals the year that they lost to the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry, that he calls a timeout in the middle of in the middle of a postseason game and tells them simply in the huddle, get your heads out of your asses, and they go on to win the game. Sometimes it works, but other times when that's your only thing you can rely on, that is not going to work. And it goes back to what we've talked about a lot on this show, maybe not some others. The Rockets have never been, by my list, a serious contender in the Western Conference. We have so many other teams that are so much more skilled. in what they can do offensively. Houston, after last night, now 22nd in half-court offensive rating, heavily reliant on what they can do from an offensive rebounding standpoint. So the Rockets are going to have some really big issues. And again, another disjointed effort and losing outright as an 8.5-point favorite to the Chicago Bulls. But hardly the headline yesterday in the NBA. That would be Victor Wembanyama declaring both at the podium and on the floor that he is an MVP candidate in a 136-111 beatdown of the Miami Heat. Wembanyama last night, 26 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 blocks on 11 of 22 shooting, 1 of 7 from three-point range. Played just 26 minutes in the win. Afterwards was asked, make the case to win the MVP. Here's what he had to say.
My first one would be that defense is 50% of the game and that it is undervalued so far in the MVP race. Because I believe I'm the most impactful player defensively in the league. Second argument would be that we almost swept OKC in the season, and we dominated them 3 times with their real team and 4 times with more rotation players. And my third argument would be that offense impact is not just points.
Offensive impact is not just points, and Wembanyama does have a very strong case. And this leads me to what we're looking at for most valuable player. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is minus 1,000 to win this award. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but to follow up, because it's a topic from yesterday's show that is now built upon because of Wembanyama's performance yesterday. Luka Doncic is the second choice at 10-1. Wembanyama since has been adjusted to 18-1. What I wanted to do was actually throw up an old graphic here to make the point known if we could. We do have Tim Bontemps' straw poll. That was the second time around. Now, there's a lot of noise here for the most part because you just don't know what's going to happen when you look at where these guys are going to end up, what's going to happen. This was from a couple of months ago. You can see the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's at the top with 78 first-place votes. Nikola Jokic at 18-1. Again, this is from February 20th, so I don't want to confuse anybody that's up there. The whole point here being is that when you look at the points at the bottom, because Victor Wembanyama was ahead of Luka Doncic at that time, he had 3 first-place votes to none for Luka Doncic. He had 75 total votes, or he was on 75 ballots compared to 59 for Luka Doncic, 242 points compared to 177. Since this came out, and if we're assuming some sort of accuracy when it comes to the way the straw poll is constructed, again, from February, do we honestly think that Victor Wembanyama has played to such a degree below Luka Doncic that he has surpassed him to the point that Luka Doncic should be 10-1 to win most valuable player and that Victor Wembanyama should be 18-1? No, not at all. Victor Wembanyama should have better odds to win most valuable player than Luka Doncic, but it comes back to the question of, okay, even if you find value in an awards market, is it actually worth betting? Yesterday, I bid. I had to do it. I added 25-1 on Victor Wembanyama. I just grabbed the number. There is value in a number like that. There is still value in 18-1 that is still currently available at some spots as well, and others. Shop around for what you can find here. But there is no universe in which Doncic, just because of this 9-game stretch, has surpassed Wembanyama. We talk about this all the time when it comes to awards, when it comes to futures. Sometimes they are a reflection of liability. When you see some of these numbers pop up, Doncic, in terms of true odds to win this award, has not done enough to surpass what Victor Wembanyama has been able to do. And I do think there is a real question. And we're going to talk to Kurt Helin coming up here in a little bit. Senior writer over there, senior managing editor at NBC Sports, writes a ton of NBA, covers it very well, about the awards race, about MVP, about what this looks like for Victor Wembanyama. But the case for Wembanyama statistically is there. The head-to-head results, as he mentioned in that clip, are there against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you just wonder if voters are going to really start to look at Victor Wembanyama, because I've made this case with Mitch before on Pod to the Futures, and I think it's an important one to make. You and I, as we're watching this right now unfold, and others who are really into awards markets and betting the awards, are following this on a nearly day-to-day basis, the ebbs and flows, the good games, the bad games. I think a lot of voters, and we've heard from some, and I've talked to a couple, that drop in at the end of the season. And it's not just NBA, but just every sport regardless. They will drop in at the end of the year when it's time to post their ballots to really start to dissect what's going on here with these awards. So Luka does have counting stats. Wembanyama has them as well. Shai is an interesting case because his efficiency numbers are off the charts, and he's been absolutely incredible. But this is all to be said that Victor Wembanyama, you can find him in the range of that 22-1. It's worth it only because his odds should be better than Luka Doncic's at this point right now. But ultimately, will it all be for nothing because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to win this award? I am absolutely fascinated by what this is going to mean. And speaking of Doncic, by the way, last night, the Los Angeles Lakers, we fell for it. I don't think I'm using this term properly. Banana in the tailpipe, is that proper? Is that what it is? I think that's the Eddie Murphy movie, isn't it? Either way, we fell for it yesterday, or at least I did. Los Angeles Lakers is a 1.5-point favorite. Yeah, Beverly Hills Cop, right? I know where it's from. I just don't know if I'm using the reference correctly. But either way, I did enjoy that movie too. And that came out before 1990, I believe. Did it not? Can you confirm that for me? Because I did watch that, I don't know, like a year ago. Anyway, 113-110. Lakers went off as a 1.5-point favorite. And sure enough, talk about these weird lines, fishy numbers, what's going to happen. Luka Doncic, 32.7 rebounds, 6 assists, not enough. Lakers make a big push. And this is a Lakers team that had a 9-game winning streak coming in, 8-1 ATS, and that snaps in a loss on the road against the Detroit Pistons. Pistons, very quietly, now 3-0 straight up and against the spread without Cade Cunningham. Don't know if that's really worth writing home about, but at the very least, they took care of business. Upcoming schedule for the Pistons as they try to stave off some of these teams for that 1 seed in the Eastern Conference will be a challenge. They get Atlanta at home, New Orleans at home. Don't sleep on the Pelicans. We'll talk about them a little bit later. One of the best bet-on teams in the NBA right now. And before you go on a road trip to Minnesota and Oklahoma City. So we'll get a lot of questions answered about the Cade Cunningham-less Detroit Pistons. I was told I used it right in terms of the terminology when it comes to the banana in the tailpipe. On the other side, let's stick with the association. We'll get back to college basketball. Adam Burke's going to be with us in 15 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on the Sweet 16 and more. But Kurt Helin, managing editor, NBA writer, NBCSports.com, will get his thoughts on Wembanyama's shot to an MVP, the dynamic between him and Luka Doncic, and one team in the Eastern Conference that I can't get out of my head. We'll tell you who that is with Kurt on the other side.
So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
With Kurt Helin, sponsored by Upside. Download the free Upside app. Earn real cash back every time you fill up. Use promo code SPORTS for 25 cents back per gallon on your first tank. Let's head out to the Progressive Guest Line. Welcome in. First guest of the day, Kurt Helin, managing editor, NBA writer, NBCSports.com. You can follow him up on X at Basketball Talk. Kurt, always good to talk to you, and we appreciate a couple of minutes. Wanted to start with where we left off before we hit a break, and we're talking a little bit about MVP and Victor Wembanyama's case that he made to the media last night for the award. Where does this race stand in your mind when it comes to MVP? Does Victor Wembanyama have a strong case to be made to be considered the most valuable player in the league?
He does have a strong case. You just watch him, and it's hard not to come away thinking, man, does anybody impact the game more than that? And so, look, he has a legitimate case. I will say, and I just wrote about this over at NBC, but as a voter, I have a vote. I would still say he's a step behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my book for a couple of reasons. One is just minutes played. I know it's a 3-game difference, but Shai's played 336 more minutes, which is like 7 full 48-minute games, and that matters. And Shai's efficiency is incredible, but and better than Wemby's. But that said, defense matters, and Wemby he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year if he gets to 65 games. He is clearly the best defender in the league, and he makes a huge impact on offense. Like, he has a really good case, and I think with the way Jokic has been playing of late, which is good but not quite at the same level, like, he might slide up to 2.
Yeah, it's interesting because that whole time we don't hear you mention Luka Doncic, and this has been my whole point. The betting market has Doncic as more probable of an MVP candidate than Victor Wembanyama.
Look, I didn't bring him into this. I think, he's been on my ballot, even though I know he slid down some people's for a while, and it really came down to this. The Lakers are winning again. He has put up incredible and very efficient offensive numbers Wemby's defensive argument, that's where it holds water. It doesn't hold as much against Shea because Shea's a good defender on the league's best defense. Like, he's a plus defender. So, yeah, Wemby's better, but Shea's a quality defender. Luka, less so. We'll be polite. Luka's not quite the same level of defender. So that, I think, holds him back. The other thing, though, is, like I said, the Lakers are just winning, and they're third in the West. When people were down on him in the MVP race, the Lakers were flirting with falling into the play-in, and that would hurt anybody's chances. It could hurt Denver's, theoretically, if they lose to Phoenix tonight or something. But I still think he kind of ends up on the bottom of the ballot somewhere. I'm not sure that he's knocking off Shea or Wemby at the top.
Yep. Kurt Helin with us again, NBC Sports at Basketball Talk up on X. All right, let's zoom out on those Los Angeles Lakers. You mentioned the winning. They had their 9-game winning streak snapped last night in Detroit, but playing very good basketball over the course of the last 15 games.
Yeah.
Is there legitimacy to this run that the Lakers are on?
Yeah, very much so. Look, they are one of those teams where I put the Knicks in there, and there's a few others where, man, they're really dangerous if everything clicks their way, right? Like, if everything kind of falls into place the way you would like it to, that is a really good team. And right now, that is exactly what's happening with the Lakers. There's a lot of credit going to LeBron James for kind of accepting the third player role, and that's legitimate. He's not dominating the ball or doing some of the things he's done in the past, and it's clearly Luka's team with AR second. But the other thing they're getting, they're getting good play out of DeAndre Ayton lately. Like, really good, energized, fill the role, do what you like him to do, play, which we haven't seen since, when the Suns made the run to the finals where he was the starting center with Chris Paul, right? Like, he's capable of these moments. So they are a really dangerous team in the West. They need everything to keep breaking their way like this. But if so, man, I don't want to be in a close game against Luka and LeBron and AR at the end of a game where it's going to be about shot making. Like, they're really good.
Yeah, they're dominating those clutch games all year long. You think it's unsustainable, but you see the guys that they have that can create individual looks, and you understand it. Lakers right now, 46-26, third in the Western Conference, 2 games ahead of Denver and Minnesota. The latter who I wanted to focus on, Minnesota Timberwolves here. If you sort by opponents and top 10 net rating on cleaning the glass, they're one of the best teams against teams that are in the top 10 in net rating, and yet the inconsistencies really bother me with Minnesota. They are a team that I think is perceived both in the betting market and in other spots as a true contender, but the results continue to be inconsistent. What have you seen from Minnesota, and can they make a third appearance in a Western Conference Finals?
Another team that I think falls into that, if everything breaks their way, and it just really hasn't. Obviously, right now they're, right at this moment without Anthony Edwards, and that slows them a little. But even if everything comes together, but I'm with you in this sense. Teams that think they can flip the switch, which this is a team that gets up for the big games and kind of loses the games they shouldn't, or aren't as focused in the games they shouldn't. Those kind of teams worry me just because they're not bringing it every night. They're not used to bringing it every night. And I worry about teams that try to flip the switch in the playoffs and make that happen. If you've proven you can do it, if you're the 2002 Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, I'm going to let it slide a little. But Minnesota's not that. They've been good, but there was another level they were expected to get to this year, and they just haven't. They're good. And again, if things break their way, maybe they can make a run back to the Western Conference Finals. But there's going to be 2 teams in the West that are going to lose in the first round. There's, that top 6 is good teams. Somebody's going to lose in the first round, and it's going to get ugly. And Minnesota's potentially that team.
Kurt Helin with us. So one of the things you tweeted out yesterday, I wanted to visit. You tweeted out, heads up, if you see a story about how player X's draft stock moved much because of play in the NCAA tournament, you're being sold clickbait. The best front offices have already done their research, want combine medical interviews, and then private workouts. It is hard not to think about Darius Acuff, who has been the talk of the town in a lot of different places. And I assume maybe that's what you were talking about. I don't want to assume entirely, but what have you made of this? These rumors that are climbing about Acuff potentially being the top pick in the NBA draft?
Yeah, the top pick thing is the one I don't buy. Like that's where I start to jump off the board. I will tell you that I had Acuff a little lower, and I like his play. I saw him going back to Hoop Summit last year up in Portland. where he just kind of, I don't want to say took over in the second half, but couldn't seem to miss in the second half. He's got such a dynamic offensive game. But going number one, look, I think they officially list him as 6'3", but most people I talk to think he's more like 6'1", without shoes. And he's the worst defender in the lottery, like bar none. And when those front offices start looking at this, they're like, hey, AJ's 6'9", can get his own shot and do all this stuff. And this guy's 6 foot and doesn't play defense. Like, there's going to be he's not going to climb past a few people, but the buzz that teams are really high on him, and he is a hot name right now, and teams are kind of there are teams willing to overlook the defense because of his incredible shot creation is very true. Like, he's not going number one, but the idea that he could slide past a couple people and get up to like 4 and get past, Caleb Wilson or Caleb Wilson, right? I got him to somebody blank, but like North Carolina, who's been out injured, and so much depends on who lands where with this draft and what those teams need. Not everybody's high on Carlos Boozer. On Boozer. Did I say Carlos? Did I go with Dad there? Cameron Boozer. Teams would be really high on Carlos Boozer if they could get him at 18. He'd be a great pick at age 18. But by the way, have you seen? I love the AT&T ad where Carlos sits between his sons, because I was the same reaction I had at Hoop Summit last year, which is I forgot what a ginormous human being. Like the Boozer brothers are big kids. And Dad just dwarfs them. He's so huge. It's going to be interesting to see, because there's a lot of teams that like the high floor of Boozer. And it kind of just depends on the lottery is going to depend on so much, because there's teams looking for very different things in this draft lottery. And once you get past the top couple, it's really going to come down to there's a lot of people who love Akoff, and him sliding up to 3rd or 4th seems really possible to me.
Kurt, last 45 seconds with you. My conspiracy theory is that it would be very Kings-esque if they were to win the lottery, get the 1st overall pick, and go Acuff. That's my conspiracy.
That is brilliant, actually. That is. I'm not even going to get into the details because of what people have told me, because you all have heard the stories too. That is the worst run organization in the league, and they are dreadful in the draft half the time. And I could see them doing that, and I always shed a little tear for whoever gets drafted there, because, man, that's a tough place to go play. And it's great fans and like one of the best buildings in the league. But, man, that's a rough spot.
Kurt, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for making time, sir.
Anytime. Thanks.
At Basketball Talk, Kurt Helin again, NBC Sports. You can follow him up on X at Basketball Talk. Segment of Money Moves brought to you by Upside. Turn your gas purchases into real cash back with the free Upside app. Download Upside now. Use promo code SPORTS for 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill-up. We'll follow up on some Helin stuff coming up in about 30 minutes. But at the desk with me next, Adam Burke, our managing editor, mid-major maestro, and one of my friends is going to be with us for the next 30 minutes.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
All right, back on the program. We have a lot to get to here. An important couple of days coming up, because the Sweet 16 is on the horizon. But more importantly, tomorrow, Major League Baseball season starts in earnest. You go to VSiN.com. You can check out the preview that has already been posted for Yankees and Giants opening day. Prediction and preview by one Adam Burke, who decides to join us here at the desk to discuss that and much more. We'll get to Major League Baseball, but I will ask, how are you feeling? It's your sport. It is right around the corner. Are you excited? You ready to go?
Yeah, I am excited. I think being able to do the guide when I did, to do it so much earlier than usual, and then not have to try and figure baseball stuff out during March Madness, I think should help me definitely during this season. And they're going to make quite a few adjustments this year too. It was a pretty rough season last year for me on a game-by-game basis. So going to make some adjustments here for this year. Obviously, plenty of resources out there, including plenty over at vsin.com. We'll have the Opta AI player prop projections, which will drop tomorrow for that Giants-Yankees game, and then for the 11 games on Thursday, and then throughout the course of the season. Pairing up once again with Ballpark Pal. They're going to have some stuff over at the website as well. So a lot of resources, and I'm going to dive into as many of them as possible, tap into them every day, and write up that article over at vsin.com.
So you'll have a daily article for Major League Baseball.
Yep. Greg Peterson will have one overnight, so it'll be posted
Cool.
the night before while the games are still going on.
Okay. And is Zach doing anything?
Yeah, Zach's going to do a player props article. So, of course, that'll be leveraging the Opta AI tools that we have, as well as some of the resources that he uses, and, of course, his own analysis as well.
There you go. 3 authors, 3 different articles every single day from Major League Baseball. So go check him out as the season gets started tomorrow at vsin.com. All right, we'll get to opening day. We'll get to baseball. We'll get to that in its entirety. But Sweet 16, I hate to say, does take center stage, man. We got a big one. And these games are awesome on paper. Yeah. They all look absolutely fantastic. So I will ask the open-ended question of the Sweet 16 matchups. Is there one that you gravitate toward the most? It could be bet. It could be entertainment. It could be anything. But what was the one game that you gravitated toward immediately?
Yeah, I would say there's 2 of them. I would say the one on Thursday is Arizona and Arkansas. Okay. That's definitely the one that stands out to me there. And then on Friday, I mean, it's got to be Duke and St. John's, right? I mean, this was talked about a lot on Selection Sunday, how difficult this region was for Duke, and it certainly appears that they were going to run into a few good teams en route to the Final Four, but now running into St. John's, St. John's team that I don't know how well they match up against Duke, and we can talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes, but those are the 2 games that really, really stand out to me, I think.
All right, let's start with that one then. I actually bet this under 142.5. That was the St. John's Duke, I should specify there. Number 7 or 6.5. It does feel, so I want to get to your thoughts about why they don't match up well, because it does feel like one of those games. Mitch and I talked about this on Pod to the Futures, which should be out sometime soon if Wyatt, no, I'm just playing. It should be out sometime today. But Mitch and I talked about this, and this felt like one of those lines where it was, man, they are begging you to take St. John's. Why is this number so big considering the way Duke has been playing? And maybe you have something to that.
Yeah, I will say, I was back there and I saw Wyatt kind of doing like the facepalm thing. Yeah. So he must be listening to and trying to edit today's episode of Pod of the Futures. So should be coming out soon here. Look, I think there's a couple of things in play here, right? The first is, as good as St. John's is defensively, they are not a good shot-making team at all. When you look at them, 196 in the country in effective field goal percentage offense, 189 in two-point percentage, 215 in three-point percentage, and they only take a 3 about 35% of the time. So in terms of offensive half-court execution, I think the shot volume will be in Duke's favor here in this game. I think they'll be better on the offensive glass than St. John's will be. Duke is going to take more threes. Duke is a much more efficient offense on the interior. So as good as St. John's is defensively, Duke can score at all of the levels, plus get second chance opportunities. And look, I mean, the Big East was not a great conference this season. Yep. We know the ACC really wasn't either, but Duke kind of shined in a lot of their big non-conference games, including that win over Michigan in the venue they'll be playing in this week, Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. So I just think from a shot volume standpoint, a shot selection standpoint, an offensive half-court execution standpoint, Duke just checks a lot of boxes for me. And yeah, this number is interesting. I think it is one where it does kind of look like they're kind of begging you to take St. John's because St. John's can play so well defensively, but I'm more inclined to look at this one from a Duke standpoint and think that they win and cover.
I think, too, so we have our contest up at the website of vsin.com. If you're in it, if you're still running our show, I think we're up to second now among the shows here at the Vegas Stats and Information Network. And I'm in the Circuit College Hoops Challenge. And I think to play a little contest theory, if you will, I'm going to use Duke because I think a lot of people, both in the Circuit College Hoops Challenge and for our little thing here for the March Madness Bracket Challenge, I think a lot of people will be on St. John's this weekend. Yeah,
I think so, too. Duke came into the tournament with that terrible first 25 minutes against Siena.
Yep.
And then, they really took it to TCU. But I think people are going to say, well, TCU played that, down to the wire game against Ohio State. Maybe they didn't have a whole lot left in the tank, this and that. Just kind of make excuses for how Duke blew them out in that game. But again, I just think you have to put defensive numbers in the right context, right? I mean, defensive numbers are going to be good when you're not playing as many really good offenses. And the Big East didn't have a lot of good offenses. When you're playing a team like Duke, arguably the best offense in the country, or certainly one of them, it's a much different animal. So I don't know that St. John's is really ready for that defensively. And as we talked about already, they can't shoot. And, now you're playing in a neutral setting you've never really played in before. I just think it's a very, very tough spot and tough matchup for the Johnnies.
The other game you pointed out, Arkansas, Arizona, correct?
Yes.
Arizona, 7.5 or 8.5. You can shop around and find all the numbers in between. Totals 166.5. This should be a very fun game on paper. We were actually just talking about Darius Acuff with Kurt Helin and his status as potentially the first overall pick. Helin, by the way, go back and watch it. It was great. And he echoed a lot of the things that I felt, which is I don't think Acuff's going to sniff the first overall pick unless the Sacramento Kings get it, which is something entirely different. I'm really interested to see how he matches up here with Arizona because I think the Wildcats got a bunch of big athletic bodies in that backcourt. They can throw at him defensively. That might bother a dude that realistically is like 6'1" and is not going to be able to match up with those dudes physically. But what do you see here?
Yeah, this is a fascinating game, right? You got a ton of star power in this game, and including, freshman star power on both sides here too, which definitely kind of adds to the intrigue a little bit in this matchup. So a couple of things that I find kind of interesting here. The first is both of these teams are kind of allergic to shooting threes, right? Arizona's bottom 5 in the nation in three-point rate. Arkansas is in the 310s, according to Bart Torvik. So these are two teams that don't really want to shoot a whole lot from the outside. The problem for Arkansas in this game is that Arizona does not let you in the interior. 28.6% shot share against on close twos, and opponents only shot 52.7% down there at the rim. So I don't know what Arkansas is going to do to score in this game, right? They're going to have to take threes, and as you said, Arizona's got a lot of long-limbed athletic guys out there, physical guys. They're going to contest those shots. And while Arkansas is a top 10 offense in three-point percentage, again, they kind of pick and choose their spots. I don't know that they will have the luxury to do that here in this game. So I do think from a betting standpoint, it makes it a little bit difficult against the spread because Arkansas is going to shoot more threes. They're good at it, but shooting more threes does create a higher variance environment in this type of game. Not to mention, I don't trust Tommy Lloyd at all whatsoever. He's had very good teams in Arizona, can't get past the Sweet 16. Maybe he'll do it here, but I think this is a game where, despite the fact that both these teams play with some tempo, I'm thinking I'm kind of liking the under a little bit, even though Arkansas is not a good defensive team, and obviously Acuff's not a good defender at the perimeter. Arizona just doesn't have the shot volume from three for me to be super worried about this game becoming a giant track meet.
Yeah, initial moves too. Most spots open 167, down to 166 at a couple of spots. So right in line with what you're thinking here, although not a big move. We'll see as we get closer if some of these big moves take hold. Adam Burke with us again, managing editor of VSiN.com. Go check out everything, all of the work. To reiterate one more time, and he's going to be with us for one more, but we're going to talk a little Major League Baseball. All of those write-ups up there every single day on the website. I'm going to throw a team at you that I want to get your thoughts on. Maybe I just want confirmation. I have no idea, but I feel strongly here. I'm in on Houston. Like, I get this now. I've watched them now for a while, ever since that 3-game losing streak. The way that they can rotate and move on defense, they're so sound. Their offense, it leaves something to be desired. They don't take a lot of shots at the rim, but everything else, the shot making is great. The backcourt defense is great. I agree with the market. We saw this open too. Got the 3.5 pretty quickly. And not only that, I know it's not the best time to bet some of these futures, but you see the way they're getting priced. 7-1 to win the whole thing or better. The only region that has that does not have an odds-on favorite to win their respective region there. Houston is still a plus price to do it. I think they're getting a little undervalued here. These first 2 rounds, you can say they haven't beaten anybody. That's fine, but they've been looking really, really impressive here over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if we can take anything out of the tournament body of work for either one of these teams, right? I mean, all 4 of their games collectively have been pretty significant blowouts. So I don't know if there's really much that we could take from this. It's very hard for me to buy in on Houston for the reason that you said. They do not get to the rim. They take a lot of jump shots. Specifically, they take a lot of mid-range jump shots. The thing is, they're very good at doing them. It is a big part of their offense. And at some point, even though I don't like the shot selection, if you're making those shots, then it doesn't really matter, right? Obviously, it's a higher risk, lower reward shot to take a mid-range jumper instead of a 3. But they've been good at doing it in the Kelvin Sampson era pretty much all the way through. So maybe it's something that I just need to get over, right? I just need to get over that mental block with it. It does prevent Houston from getting to the free throw line a lot, which is something that, can be problematic in a game like this. We're going to play another physical team like Illinois. But this is another one. Illinois, over 50% shot share from deep. So they're going to fire away from long range. They're going to try to shoot over this Houston defense. If they do it and shoot maybe 45%, they probably win. If they do it and shoot 29%, they lose and probably lose ugly. So another high variance game here.
Sharp Plays just completed another dominant run, folks, including a 2025 campaign that saw bankrolls double. Check them out at sharpplays.com. Full performance auditing and more. When the Sharp Plays move, sportsbooks take notice. Respected, watched, feared. Start winning with them at sharpplays.com.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
know, maybe it's just the caffeine flowing through me, but I gave a quick clap right before we get started. You know when you get jazzed up, get ready to go, man. Get fired up.
I mean, are you taking supplements while you do your hard 75? Is that what it is? Just getting enraged over here?
Just caffeine and creatine. The 2 C's. That's it.
All right.
That's all I'm taking, and none of that other stuff. You know what I mean? Because I read a lot. Actually, I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours that might be married to another mutual friend of ours, and the thought of the other things that you take messes up your whole body for the rest of your life. You can't do that sort of stuff. I'm not talking about steroids.
He's very in tune with that kind of thing.
Yes,
very much so.
Yes, he is. We're talking about Justin, of course. No. All right, let's talk a little bit. Justin, are you going to start taking TRT? You going to start juicing up a little bit here? No? Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit of NIT before we move on to Major League Baseball, because we were chopping this up off the air, and I did want to bring these games up to you because we do have 2 today. NIT quarterfinals. Wichita State is at Tulsa. Tulsa is a 3.5-point favorite, total of 152.5. And St. Joseph's on the road against New Mexico. That number's down to 10.5 at most spots, total of 154.5. So I'll let you have the floor because angles for both of these for you here, correct?
Yeah, angles for both of them. So I did play Tulsa tonight, minus 3.5, which I'll get back to in a second, because St. Joe's and New Mexico is a really, really interesting game. So you and I were talking about this during the break, as you said. So St. Joe's, their first NIT game, they played at Colorado State. Went on the road, won in elevation. Their next game was at Cal. That was on Sunday. They were down 19 in the second half, scored the go-ahead bucket with 1:49 left, and nobody scored again. So they won by a point out in Berkeley. Now, with a very quick turnaround, they go to Albuquerque and play at 5,300 feet in elevation against the Lobos, who are just bombing away from 3 in this tournament. They've taken 61 three-pointers in their 2 NIT games. So this one's kind of all over the place in terms of the way I'm thinking about it, where it's a big number, right? 10.5, kind of, hovering there. It was 11. Maybe some people kind of taking St. Joe's in this one. But I'm looking for either a second half play on the Lobos or a live bet on the Lobos in this game, because I don't foresee St. Joe's, having a whole lot left in the tank for this game, especially playing the second half in elevation where New Mexico is just firing from 3, and the Hawks are going to have to chase them all over the floor. So looking for a second half play, looking for a live play here. Don't want to lay the 10.5 full game, but a really, really interesting game in the NIT to be sure. And for Wichita State, Tulsa, I don't think David Green's going to play. I think that's why this line came down a little bit. Wichita State did win 2 of the 3 meetings up to this point, knocked Tulsa out of the American Conference tournament. But Tulsa was playing with 0 rest after a triple overtime game against North Texas. I think they want revenge in this one, and they are at home. And I think they also want to advance to the semifinals, which are April 2nd, where maybe Green, one of the senior leaders on the team, will be healthy enough to come back by that point. I think they really want to get him another game if they can. Maybe he plays tonight. He was supposed to be a game-time decision on Sunday. It didn't go. But I like the Golden Hurricane minus 3.5 against Wichita State.
All right, cool. And are these up on the website as well?
Yes.
Okay,
over at VSiN.com.
Over at VSiN.com, and I'm sure tomorrow the other 2 quarterfinal matchups, Illinois State, Dayton, Nevada, and Auburn, will have some information up there at the website as well. All right, Adam Burke is with us. College basketball, our mid-major maestro, sure, but Major League Baseball is here. It starts tomorrow. So I want to start with this. We have talked to you about win totals, and you've talked about how you'd rather play unders because if you start to play some of these overs, injuries, things like that, your win total position can only get worsened as spring training goes along. Now that we're on the eve of Major League Baseball and its season, is there an over that you have added, or is there a team worth looking at now that we're here and you won't get derailed with injury, like between the offseason and the start of the season?
Yeah, for sure. So, Detroit is still sitting at 85.5. This is one that I played early, but now I think you can definitely play it with more confidence where they're healthy. Kevin McGonigal is going to break camp with the team. I think that's fantastic. It's really good to see them going for it. So this is a number that really hasn't moved since early on in spring training. But again, I played it early thinking it would move. Turns out it didn't, but I think Detroit over 85.5 is one really worth looking at now. Similarly, the Royals over 82.5, where Cleveland has stayed healthy, but the offense is still lacking a lot. And if Chase DeLauder is able to be healthy throughout the course of the season, their offense looks a lot different. I'm glad that he is getting to opening day healthy, but with what he's done and the expectations put on him now at this point, like, the kid's going to have to find a way to play through the whole season. I don't think he's going to. The Royals are healthy. Cole Reagans, the stuff looks fine, even though the numbers weren't great. Their rotation is healthy, getting to the finish line of spring training. Seth Lugo missed some time last year. He seems okay coming back this year. So Royals over 82.5 is another one that I took a look at here. And then lastly, the Miami Marlins over 72.5 is one that I've added to my portfolio here because they're healthy. Max Meyer's gotten through healthy. Yuri Perez has gotten through healthy. Sandy Alcantara's gotten through healthy. Kyle Stowers is going to miss a little bit of time, and he's probably their highest upside offensive player, but it's not a really significant injury. It's not going to keep him out for very long. So the fact that they were able to get their main rotation guys to the finish line of spring training when they don't have a lot of internal depth was something that I was waiting to see. So the Marlins over 72.5 has been an addition for me here after spring training.
All right, so now that we're here, I'm going to declare it's going to happen finally. The Dodgers are going to fall off. Blake Snell's not coming back until late May, according to most recent reports. What are we doing here? Edmonds hurt as well. We saw Roki Sasaki the other day look like absolute hot garbage. The Dodgers are mortal. This is over. It's done.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to disagree. But Roki Sasaki is probably going to go to AAA, and we'll see if he can figure things out. It was something that he wasn't really open to last year.
Yeah.
Then, of course, he got hurt anyway. He kind of said coming over, I'm not going to go pitch in the minor leagues. And they were like, oh, okay, fine. Well, now he's probably going to.
Yeah,
so, yeah, they got to get him right. They definitely have to fix him. But there's just an obscene amount of depth on this team here. River Ryan is going to make the opening day roster or at least be up there very, very soon. He's a guy that's got great upside. Missed a season and a partial part of a season with Tommy John surgery. Edmonds not really that big of a loss because Alex Freeland's one of their top prospects. He's going to break camp with the team, be in the opening day lineup. They're just too good. Now, I will say, I guess I need to know the context of what you mean by fall off. Now, go over their season win total. That's an altogether different story because this is going to be an NBA team during the season. There's going to be a lot of load management here. Pitchers are not going to get extended. Guys in the lineup are going to get more days off, stuff like that. Fall off in terms of, not make the World Series, not win the pennant. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking third in the division. That's probably a fair answer to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Wow, okay.
No, I'm just
so, let
me ask you this then. I am being sarcastic, by the way, folks.
Right.
To your point about this being an NBA team, load managing, not really stretching guys out until you get later in the year, Yoshinobu Yamamoto is second choice to win National League Cy Young. So then are we avoiding this for Yamamoto? Because if they're going to take that tack, then I would assume that this is somewhat mispriced and we could find some other guys behind him to go and win this award. Paul Skeen's obviously your favorite at plus 210.
Yeah, I think they're going to take it easy with Yamamoto. Through 173 and 2/3 innings last year, basically had to carry this rotation for a while because there were so many guys hurt. The only other guys that threw over 100 innings for the Dodgers last season, Clayton Kershaw, who's now retired, and Dustin May, who's no longer on the team. So I think they're going to try and do what they can to not force Yamamoto to work as deep into ball games. Did make 30 starts last year, almost had a no-hitter in Baltimore, by the way, where he had actually thrown 8 2/3 no-hit. And that was a game where, I don't think they really want him to be pitching that deep into games when they have, much different things at play. So I don't like Yamamoto to win the Cy Young. Certainly there's a chance that he could. Obviously he's, a phenomenal pitcher, one of the top 5 pitchers in the National League. I just don't know that he's going to be able to build up the workload where the Dodgers are far more interested in racking up another World Series title.
So here's my submission for long shot to win National League Cy Young. Because here's the thing, too. The market's getting priced so oddly. I just mentioned that Blake Snell's not going to be back till the end of May. He's still floating there at some spots like 18-1, one of the top 6 choices to win this award. We just mentioned Yamamoto. Kodai Senga for the New York Mets. Looks like maybe he's back in the sense of potentially being healthy and being able to provide for the Mets. You're talking in the range of 100-1. Go shop around and find some numbers. Obviously, there's going to be some different shops. But I thought Senga, we've seen the pinnacle of Senga is really, really good. And if we're talking about a potentially mispriced market with a bunch of Dodgers near the top, Tyler Glasnow's at 35-1. I feel like maybe if we're sniffing around for some deep cuts, Senga's got to be a guy. And of course, he plays in New York, all the other added benefits of playing for a team like that. If he returns to form, why not at 100-1 to add him?
It's a big if, right? That's the thing with this Cy Young market is, the body is not built to withstand what these pitchers go through, and especially to do it year after year after year. And for Senga, 113 innings last year, just 5 1/3 the year prior, 166 1/3 in his first season stateside. I don't know if that's enough, right? Had a sub-3 ERA, but barely cracked 200 strikeouts with 202. There's a few benchmarks you pretty much have to reach to be in the Cy Young discussion. One of them is an ERA under 3. The other is 200-plus strikeouts. Yeah. So you've got to have the volume to get those counting stats. And, WAR, wins above replacement, is a counting stat too. You still have to be out there accumulating games and being that much better than a replacement player. I don't know that Senga has enough of a workload in him, but again, you're banking on health, and you're betting on health with a lot of these guys anyway. So at 100-1, you could talk me into it. I obviously it's a long shot for a reason, but if he is healthy, again, he's going to win a lot of games with the Mets. He's going to have the win-loss record. They're a good defensive team outside of Juan Soto, but he moves to the other corner. So there are worse bets you can make at 100-1 for sure.
It's a deep cut and cut social betting platform. Lets you bet directly against your friends and other users, basically anything: sports, politics, pop culture, and even personal bets. You can get a 15% deposit bonus on your first deposit when you use promo code VSIN. Go to cut.com, KUTT.com, download the App Store, and use promo code VSIN.